that? I don't know. Let's go. Hurry!
You don't come. Welcome, oh. I beg, before we go begin this story, we go scatter your head. Make you do it in. Subscribe, sharp. Like the video, drop your sweet comments. No, they form. Now beggar the beg, oh. Okay, now, sitting well.
They say the compound on Udi Road was built in a hurry and with the wrong blessings. Tin roofs rattled like frightened teeth whenever the wind passed, and the corridor lamps flickered even when the meter was fat with units. Yet people came, tailors with measuring tapes around their necks, hairdressers who sang while braiding, bus drivers who left before dawn, and young couples who prayed for children. Rents were cheap, and in a city that chews the poor with slow teeth, cheap is a hymn people sing with their eyes shut. The landlady was called Iya Onile by everyone, though her real name was Madame Omotara. She wore wrappers so crisp they crackled when she turned, and beads that caught the sun and threw it back at the jealous sky. Her face was smooth like water before a storm. You would never guess her years. That was part of the whisper. Some said she had no shadow when the sun was highest. Some said her shadow was a step out of time, late by a second, as if it refused to follow her. The tenants kept their heads down, but stories walk through cracks. They said new wives who moved into the back rooms conceived quickly, but something strange happened after birth. They bled oddly. They healed too slowly. Months later, they would sit on their doorsteps staring at the road, soft-eyed, distant, as the laughter of children drifted past them like birds they couldn't call back. Misfortune, the men said. Midwives, the aunties argued. But the children of the compound knew better. They avoided the corridor at midnight, where a smell like peppered smoke and bitter leaves crept under doors, and the sound of clicking heels paced between the rooms, counting. When Amara and Chaik arrived with their few bags and one borrowed mattress, the compound swallowed them the way a calabash swallows water. 3 months, Cheek said, paying in crisp notes. 3 months and we will move to a place with our own tap. 3 months, Amara whispered. One hand unconsciously spread across her belly. She was already expectant. Though the bundle was small, the kick still shy. Iya Onile smiled like a locked chest. "Welcome," she said. "Do not fear the wind in this compound. It makes noise, but it cannot lift a stone." And that night, the lamp in their room flickered, then steadied, as if it had taken a long breath and decided to keep watching. Old people say that houses keep memory the way baobabs keep secrets in the folds of their bark. Before it was a compound, this place had been a midwife's cottage. The woman, Enkay, was skilled with herbs and hands, a calm voice in the storm of birth. She collected placentas in clean cloth, tied them like gifts, buried them near the orange tree with the mouth of the newborn facing sunrise, so life would always find the child quickly. Then one Harmattan season, Enkay lost her own child. The tale splits there. Some say the child came feet first and refused breath. Others swear a jealous rival cursed her. What is the difference when grief drinks from both cups? A lake's sorrow turned her face into a thin mask. She sought the river wife, the cold lady who watches from the bend where water stops smiling. The river wife gave her a gourd and said, "Beauty that does not tire, and a house that never empties." But the world is a market. Pay and go. What was the price? The river wife's bracelets jingled like a warning a woman ignores when thunder is already kneeling. After that, the cottage changed owners quickly. People built rooms around it, then rooms around those rooms, until a crooked square of doors stared at a cracked courtyard. The orange tree stopped fruiting. The soil cooled like a hand withdrawn. A lake vanished the way fog does after morning prayer. Years later, Madame Omotara bought the place with cash bound strongly in rubber. She never haggled. She never moved in. Landlords don't sleep in the houses they feed upon. She kept one room for herself at the end of the left-wing corridor. The door always locked. The key heavy on her waist like a pet. "Stay away from that room," Mama Ekanem, the oldest tenant, told anyone who would listen. Houses have mouths. Not all mouths are for speaking, but hunger and hope make people deaf. And Udi Road was long with both. On certain nights, the corridor seemed to lean. The bulbs hummed. If you stood still enough, you could hear a heartbeat that did not belong to you. The morning Amara fetched water from the communal tap, she found Mama Ekanem resting a bucket on her hip, breath whistling softly. The old woman wore a wrapper patterned with beads of corn, and a blouse faded where the sun loved it too much. Her eyes, though, were new and sharp. "You are heavy with promise," she said, nodding at Amara's belly. "May your child come with open hands, not clenched fists." "Amen," Amara murmured. Mama Ekanem leaned close. "Listen, when you wake at night and hear heels counting the corridor, turn your face to the wall and pretend to snore. Do not open your door for any voice that calls you sister, unless it belongs to your mother. Take salt with your bath water after birth. Salt remembers the sea." Amara smiled politely, the way the young do when the old lace their fears with proverbs. "Thank you, Mama." "I have buried 3 grandchildren," Mama Ekanem said, voice turning thin. "Not from death you can hold. From death that leaves you alive and empty, it is worse." Later, in their small room, Amara told Chike. He laughed without malice. "If old women do not warn, their tongues will dry up. See, I have found a mechanic job near Mile 2. We will keep to ourselves. This house will be a stone we step on, not the river we drown in." That evening, Iya Onile visited. She moved like a cat that owned the floor. "I brought oil and pepper," she said, setting down a tray with a neat smile. "New tenants must eat, or the house will think them poor." Her eyes slid to Amara's belly. "How many moons?" 7, Amara said before she could school her mouth. "Children come quickly to this compound," the landlady said, almost fondly. Something in the soil. She pressed a small sachet into Amara's palm. Powder the colour of dried sunset. "For strength," she said. "Women must not faint when joy is near." When Iya Onile left, the room smelled faintly of burnt sugar and bitter leaf. Amara wanted to throw the sachet away, but the door had just closed with its tiny iron cough. And fear is loudest when you are alone with it. That night the corridor counted again. Tick, 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 heels on concrete, as if someone measured each womb in the house, deciding which one was ripe for hunger. The baby came on a night when rain stood at the window, like an uninvited guest, tapping its fingers against the louvered panes. There was no time to fetch a nurse. Mama Ekanem washed her hands, tied a headscarf, and became young again, her fingers sure, her voice a steady rope. Chiki paced, a prayer bead pressed so hard into his palm that it left moons when he opened his hand. "Push, my daughter," Mama said. "Push like a canoe leaving mud." The cry that split the room made the bulb flare. A boy, ruddy and loud, fists already arguing with air. Amara laughed and cried at once. Chiki crumpled at her feet, his tears clean and bright as salt. Neighbours came with congratulations wrapped in steam. Ogi, pepper soup, fried plantain they pretended was for strength, and not an excuse to eat together. Even Ionile appeared, her wrapper the colour of rain-wet leaves. "A handsome boy," she said, her smile thin as a blade. "Let me bless him." She reached for the child. Amara's body reacted before her mind. She pulled the baby close. The landlady's eyes did not blink. Ah, "First-time mothers," she said softly, amused. "Fear is a small goat that butts everyone." She left a bowl of soup. "For the mother," she said, "so her blood will remember to flow correctly." The smell was deep and sweet, like a story told in a low voice. When the corridor quieted and the house swallowed the last laughter, Amara tried to sleep. But sleep was far, hiding behind an anthill. She felt watched. By the bulb, by the window, by the tiny mirror that had seen more prayers than faces. The baby suckled and dozed and suckled again. Then came the sound, the one children knew but could not name for adults without being dismissed. Heels, deliberate and patient, counting the corridor. Tick, tick, tick. They stopped at every door, listened, then moved on. The handle turned. Just the smallest test. How well was this door married to its frame? Amara held her breath. The handle stilled, then moved again. A voice sighed through the crack under the door, soft as powder. "Sister, open, it is only me." Amara turned her face to the wall and snored the way Mama Ekanem had taught her. Too loudly, too clumsily. The baby slept like someone who trusted the world. The handle stilled. The heels counted backward, fading towards the locked room at the corridor's end. Amara did not move until the sun finally found the window. Morning wore a pale face. Amara was tired past bones. Cheeky went to queue at the tap. The baby slept with his mouth open, dreaming of milk and soft skin. When Amara stood, the world shifted. Her belly felt hollow, like a calabash that had been poured out and rinsed too clean. A cold draught moved through her, breath where breath should not be. She wrapped a cloth around her waist and walked carefully, as if her insides might clink. In the washroom she saw herself in the stained mirror. Eyes wide, lips dry. She tried to laugh at her fear, but the sound came out like the creak of a door. Mama Ekanem knocked. "How is the child?" "And the mother?" "The child is fine." Amara hesitated. "I feel strange." "Empty. Not tired. Empty." Mama's eyes narrowed. "Did you drink from the soup?" "No," Amara said quickly. The bowl sat on the stool, its surface glazed with oil, tempting as a promise. "I did not," Mama breathed out. "Good. Bring me salt." They bathed with salted water, murmuring a prayer that remembered rivers and seas and the first woman who ever formed a child in darkness. The baby giggled in his sleep, as if he recognized old names. When Amara dressed again, the cold inside her had warmed a little, like a room where someone finally struck a match. Still, when Cheeky returned, his face crumpled at her touch. "You are cold," he said, startled, as if he had touched a stone in the shade. That afternoon a visiting nurse came, called by a neighbor. She checked Amara quickly and frowned, not understanding what she felt and didn't feel. "Rest," she said, scribbling. "Your body needs time." The moment the nurse left, the landlady appeared, as if conjured by the scent of ink. "Ah, you should have told me. I have herbs that pull a woman back to herself." She lifted the bowl. "Just a sip." Amara stepped back. "I am fine." Iya Onile smiled, the way a mask smiles when a drum misbehaves. "As you wish," she said, and her heels clicked away. That night the emptiness returned, heavier, like someone had set a hand on the inside of her and pressed gently, testing for the door. There are days when a house forgets to pretend. On such a day, the wind lifted every curtain in the compound and held them mid-breath. Doors complained. The bulb in the corridor hummed a prayer it couldn't finish. The smell of bitter leaves thickened until even the cats sneezed. Sola, the hairdresser, had noticed that Iya Onile left the compound at midday on Market Fridays. "Only an hour," she whispered to her customers while parting braids. "Enough to count secrets. Today was a Friday." Today fear was bored and courage tasted like pepper. It took 3 women and a flat spoon to lift the key from the nail outside the landlady's kitchen. The key felt heavier than its size demanded, the way a small word can carry a war. They walked down the corridor slowly, pretending at casual step, their hearts knocking like debtors at their ribs. The locked door at the end resisted, then sighed open. The air inside was cold and sweet, like a shrine where someone spills cola and blood and forgets to say sorry. Shelves lined the walls, and on those shelves sat calabashes and jars, some wrapped in red cloth, others in white, each tied with a charm of cowries and black thread. A single stool faced a mirror. The mirror stared back like an eye that had seen too much and refused to blink. Sola reached for the nearest jar. The charm twitched, a tiny sound like a mosquito changing its mind. Inside the glass, something rested, pale and quiet, curled upon itself like a sleeping moon. The room became suddenly louder with the small sounds the women's mouths made without permission. Wombs, Mama Eckenham breathed, not surprised so much as exhausted. She keeps them like money. On the table lay a ledger, names written in careful ink. Beside each, dates, small sketches of wrappers, notes only the writer understood. At the bottom of one page, written as if in a hurry, Alake, debt paid, river wife appeased. A soft scuff came from the corridor. The women froze, footsteps unhurried, certain, as if the floor itself had decided to meet its owner halfway. They turned the key too fast. It caught, then turned, then caught again. The door opened a breath and stuck. Mama Eckenham shoved her shoulder into it, whispering a prayer that remembered her mother and her mother's mother. The door yielded. They spilled into the corridor, locked it behind them, returned the key to its nail with hands that trembled like leaves. They did not run. Running makes a story chase you. When Ionile walked in, the corridor smiled its crooked smile. Her eyes flicked to the nail. The key hung exactly where it should. She sniffed, the way a cat measures a room, and smiled as if greeting an old friend. By the next moon, whispers were not enough. Someone had to leave a mark on the silence. It was Sola, vain and soft-hearted, who broke first. She had a scar running across her cheekbone, a memory of a girlhood cooking fire. If my face were even, she used to say, I would be dangerous. Men had loved her anyway. But she wanted to love herself without squinting. The landlady's visit was simple. She came in the blue hour before dusk, when the world forgives small sins. I can smooth what life has roughened, she said, lighting a little clay lamp that smoked gently. Beauty is a doorway. Why should it always open for others and not for you? Sola laughed, but it cracked at the edge. Doorways are for houses, she said. I am a roadside stall. Roadside stalls make the most money, Ionile replied. But even stalls need a signboard. Let me write your name where eyes cannot ignore it. What is the price? Sola asked, suddenly old. She had heard the stories. Something small, the landlady said, opening a leather pouch. You will not even feel it go. You have no need for it again. Sola's hand flew to her belly, empty as a calabash in her mutton. She had birthed 2 children, both alive and loud, and always hungry. Did she need her womb? She did not plan more babies. She needed money. She needed ease. She needed the boys who cheered her to stop staring like she was a promise kept for others. What do you take from mothers? Sola whispered. Only what they no longer use, Ionile said gently. I do not steal from empty shelves. A long minute. The lamp crackled. Sola shook her head. No, my body is not a market. Even if I never pass through that door again, it is mine. The landlady's face did not change, but the air cooled. You speak like a woman who has not counted the cost of staying ordinary. I have counted, Sola said very softly, and I will be rich another way. For a while after Ionile left, Sola's room smelled of strange things, like rain passing over a dead fire, like a singing bowl touched by a finger that never learned mercy. That night, men came to braid lines at Sola's shop. She worked with a steady hand and did not look towards the locked door at the end of the corridor. Hunters know when a town is carrying a smell it cannot identify. Odekunle came with the dust, tall and thin, a man whose sandals had learned every kind of road. He sold charms for market thieves and hung amulets that convinced goats to return home. People laughed because laughter is cheaper than medicine, but they bought his small bags anyway. He slept under the mango at the square until he heard the story walk past him, wearing the voices of women who spoke softly and men who shook their heads and hushed them. He asked questions the way a drummer speaks to a masquerade, respectful, insistent. The name Alake found him. So did the river wife and the ledger nobody admitted to seeing. When he reached Udi Road, he stood outside the compound and sniffed. A cat slipped beneath the gate and hissed at him, as if warning him to leave his curiosity outside. He did not. Curiosity is a hunter's oldest child. Odekunle introduced himself to Iya Onile as a man seeking a room. She looked at him the way a knife considers a rope. "We are full," she said. He smiled, showing teeth that had made their peace with kola nut. "Full houses spill," he said. "I will wait." For 3 days he sat at the kiosk across the road, mending broken charms, chalking quiet signs on the ground with a stick he did not buy. He watched the corridor. He counted the nights. On the second night he tied a red cloth at the gate, a little flag for a spirit that could not resist anything red. In the morning the cloth was gone, and the dust near the gate wore footprints that did not match any shoe in the compound. He brought palm wine to Mama Ekanem and listened as the old woman cleared her throat of stones. "You cannot fight a river wife's contract," she said, fear bleaching the wisdom in her voice. "Even fire kneels to water. Be careful, hunter." Odekunle nodded. "Fire kneels, yes, but ash goes everywhere." That evening he bought salt. He bought chalk. He bought a small bell and a bigger silence. The tenants watched him without hope, because hope had cost them too much. Even Chike scoffed quietly, until he saw the way the hunter's eyes never left the locked door. Storms don't always announce themselves with thunder. That night the corridor was careful. The bulb burned without stuttering. The wind stretched, yawned, and slept. Babies sighed small dreams into the air. The house leaned into itself the way a python coils around its warmth. At midnight, the heels began their counting. Tick, tick, tick. They paused at Amara's door. The handle turned, testing the marriage again. Inside, Amara held her child and whispered a name she had not yet told anyone. A name that tasted like light. Odekunle stood at the far end of the corridor, where the shadow of the locked room thickened. He had drawn a circle on the floor with chalk, salted its rim, and set 4 lamps at the 4 corners. In his right hand he held the small bell. Around his left wrist a string of cowries muttered to each other like old men. When the heels reached the chalk line, they stopped. "Good evening, hunter," said a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. A voice that had learned to speak by listening to women in pain. "Good evening, mother of many," Odekunle replied. The landlady stepped into the light. Her face was beautiful the way a knife is beautiful. Her wrapper moved as if filled with a river. From her waist hung the key, the pet that bit only on command. "This is not your business," she said calmly. Men should not interrupt the conversations of wombs. Odekunle smiled with half his mouth. "Then why do you eat what you do not speak?" Her eyes sharpened. "Old debts," she said. "Old bargains. I pay for what was promised to me." "Buy a lake," he said. "But the dead cannot sell the living." "Bring the gourds." The corridor shivered. Somewhere a baby began to cry. The precise note of fear every mother knows. Amara swayed, then steadied, humming the way women hum when the world is trying to climb into their room. Iya Onile laughed, and the lamps trembled. "You think chalk will save you?" Not chalk, Odekunle said softly, and rang the bell. The sound was small and fierce. The air wrinkled like cloth. The locked door behind the landlady twitched. One by one, the jars on the shelf answered with thin, high voices. The voices of things that wanted to be remembered. The corridor filled with the smell of salt and rain and cut herbs. The landlady's wrapper shuddered. For a moment her shadow arrived on time, then moved ahead of her, then doubled back, confused. She raised a hand. Her nails lengthened, curved like billhooks. "Leave," she said, the word thickening the air. Odekunle rang the bell again and stepped forward, the cowries on his wrist clicking like teeth. Fire crept from the lamps to the chalk line, then walked slow, disciplined, a respectful fire that asked permission from the salt before it burned. The circle brightened. The landlady hissed as the heat touched her feet. "Mother of many," Odekunle said, voice low, "return what you have hoarded, or fire will teach your river how to thirst." Something old moved in her eyes, a memory of a night when the river wife laughed and bracelets sang like warning. She reached for the key. It resisted. She tugged again. Behind her, a jar cracked, the sound fine and terrible as a hair breaking. A wind rose from nowhere, not cold, not warm, just present. The lamps stretched tall. The baby's cry jumped an octave, then softened, then ceased. Amara felt heat in her belly, as if a hand had been removed gently from a place it had no right to be. The jars began to crack, one after another, like knuckles of a giant waking from sleep. Morning found the compound in ash-grey quiet. People stood in doorways, soot smudging their cheeks, lamps dead, salt clumped into small, obedient stones. The locked room stood open at last, shelves empty, charm threads curled like snakes that had forgotten what to bite. Here, Onile sat on the floor with her wrapper torn and her beauty ordinary. Without her borrowed brightness, she looked like someone's auntie, the one who tells jokes at weddings and cries at funerals. She bled from a cut that did not want to close. The wound in the place a woman never shows anyone but a midwife and a lover. Not gushing, not dramatic, just a stubborn red line that told the truth. Odekunle stood over her, exhausted, his bells silent now, his cowries at peace. "Return what you have eaten," he said, though he knew the jars had already broken. Their quiet moons melted back into the women they belonged to, the way mist returns to morning. "I cannot return what I did not swallow," she whispered, and for the first time sorrow showed its face in her voice. "I traded. I was promised a house that never empties." I should have asked empties of what? She laughed, a broken bowl of sound, the river wife. By evening the police had come and gone, baffled by a crime with no law to fit it. They took the ledger. They did not take the smell of herbs and old blood and furious prayers. Smells have no handcuffs. The tenants swept. They cooked. They checked their babies twice, and then a third time. Amara walked as if relearning her body, hand on her belly, surprised by its familiar weight, the warmth that had returned like a prodigal. That night the compound slept for the first time in months. No heels counted the corridor. The bulb hummed and then fell quiet. Even the old orange tree sighed. And in the morning a single green fruit hung like a promise. Odekunle left before dawn, as hunters do when they have no wish to be thanked. He wrote nothing on the ground this time. He carried ash in a small gourd and shook it into the wind at the bend where the road forgets its name. Weeks later, they sealed the landlady's room. Someone painted over the door. But paint is only skin. Sometimes the tap would run sour for a minute, as if water were remembering a debt it had almost forgiven. And children, oh children, learned a new rule, a simple one. When you hear heels counting the corridor and they stop at your door, you do not answer, not even if the voice that calls you sister knows your name. You turn your face to the wall. You snore like a trickster. You wait for morning. Old people now add a line to the tale, a thin stitch that holds the cloth together. Curses are like trades. Ended in one house, they look for another stall. They move from locked rooms to open roads, from a landlady's waist to a market woman's bag, to a young girl's dream of a face without scars. If you ever pass a river bend and the water stops smiling, toss in a pinch of salt. Say a name you promised to keep. Walk on without looking back. And if you feel a sudden emptiness, cold and curious, press your palm to your belly and speak to your body the way a mother speaks to a child lost in a crowd. Come back, I am here, because even now, when the wind lifts the curtains on Udi Road, when the orange tree rustles and the cats twitch in their sleep, neighbours say the same thing softly, as if afraid to wake anything. The house has stopped eating, yes, but hunger, like water, remembers the path it took.